Excellent. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the San Francisco Independent Short Film Festival. I'm Katie from Festival Formula, and today we'll be speaking to some of the filmmakers featured in the Block Docs 3. So I have just a very quick icebreaker question for all of our guests to answer, and it is very, very simple. It's not taxing. If someone were to make a movie of your life, what genre would it be? Something nice and fun.
I can go first. Animated, certainly. Absolutely.
Nice. Nice.
I'd say suspenseful thriller.
Nice. Edgy, like it.
I'd
go
probably
with
say
film noir,
Noir. Okay.
something mysterious.
Yeah. Brandon?
probably like a dark comedy. I'm sticking with that, definitely.
I feel like they're all the different stages of how we've all been during the pandemic. Like, in whichever order you want to put that in. Okay, so let's crack on talking about these films. So this collection of documentaries, for me as an audience member watching them together in this block, deal with pain, loss, grief, identity, and what people leave behind and what carries on long after they've left into future generations. So I'm just going to go around kind of each film, and they are in the order that they are in the block. So I kind of kicked it off with 1,000 Ways to Kiss the Ground, which I think is a beautiful title, by the way.
Thank you.
So it's a documentary that explores the feelings of grief through the stories of those who have experienced loss or trauma in the climbing community, a record of those doing what they loved, and the delicate balance of something that can bring joy as well as sadness. This is going really, really niche, but there's a moment where the nuances of description really come into play in your film, and there's that conversation about killed versus died. Mm-hmm. And that really struck me, because I think when you're dealing with that subject of grief, it's so entwined with the ownership that we give it, and about what we assign to it. And there are some really raw emotions that you allow people to feel, like literally on screen, and that they feel comfortable enough to share. So how did you prepare for the delicacy of this topic, knowing that you are kind of welcoming people to be exceptionally open about those moments?
I think mostly going into those interviews withholding my expectation of anything. So, we went into the interviews with the expectation that we were going to do an interview, and I actually withheld my desire to make a film by those interviews until I actually had most of them, not all of them, but most of them, because I didn't want to, as a filmmaker, go in hoping that they would say something specific or have any level of drama or anything, because that desire, I think, as a filmmaker, even when you're talking about that subtle of an emotion and that nuance of really allowing what is to just come up, I really had to hope that I was going to make a film, but not actually expect that it would happen. And then about 10 interviews in, I knew that I had enough that I could make a film. So at that point, I was starting to do the whole filmmaking thing and edit as I go and whatever. But I really let the interviews lead in to the extent that even they were going to tell me if I had a film or not. So in that way, there was really no manipulation, or I wasn't looking for an answer, or I wasn't leading them in any way, because I was open to not actually making a film.
That's interesting. So I suppose in a way it's, from a creative perspective, it's kind of allowing an idea to breathe and seeking that validation and going, yeah, there's something there. This story does deserve to be told. You utilize a lot of existing footage of the people that passed on, which again was, I think, a really kind of poignant moment. And it made me think about the impact of the moving image and what it means for us to capture those moments, because a lot of the stories that deal with grief in this block are about those little moments that seem so kind of, irrelevant. They're kind of little moments that you kind of try and cling to because it's it's something that means something. Has this topic influenced how you approach your other subjects in your other projects? Or is it something that you've gone, I've done this, I've tried this, I don't want to kind of go back there again, I want to do something else? Or is this kind of untapped something that you want to explore a lot more?
It's certainly liberated me, I think, to really go deeper in the direction of nuance in all of my films. I was sort of headed there anyway, but in doing this and just really trying to honor each person's experience as it's happening and the tiny little moments that are real for them, whether or not they're really understood by me, they're worthy of attention. It's really, yeah, it's kind of brought me down a notch lower into like the minutia of the human experience, I guess. I'm very character driven in the films that I make. It's often about one person, or it's often about people and people's mostly internal experience. I've noticed a trend in the films I'm making, and so it's really, yeah, it's like knocked me down a few levels into like what's really important and what do I really want to pay attention to, and what do I feel is worthy of other people's attention. And I'm noticing that it's more and more the mundane that's most important. Yeah.
But I think they're the moments that people cherish.
Yeah.
You know, from those films. I think if every film that I've kind of watched, whether it be a documentary or narrative or animation or anything, it's those little tiny moments that kind of stick with me, because they mean a lot. Like, they actually kind of say a lot more than, you know, sometimes it's a line, sometimes it's a fragment of a look, but I think they mean a lot.
And they're hard to get in documentary. Like, you have to, it's an interest. I mean, I've been noticed that there's a lot of films that kind of do this type of thing in the narration world, or the narrative world, sorry, where you can make up those moments and you can set a whole scene around a look. But when you're making a documentary, the looks have to happen and you have to be there shooting when they're happening, and you have to see them while shooting, while they're happening. And so everything has to come together in a little moment. And so I find them very, very special, because they're the things you can't make up in a documentary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And one I'm working on, I've been shooting a woman for 2 years, and I have a lot. And I don't even have that many moments in this, and I've been shooting her for 2 years. So it's, yeah, there's special moments in documentary.
Definitely. And can you tell us about the collaboration with the Climbing Grief Fund and how you work together? Because I presume that they would have been key in kind of getting these people, you know, able to talk to you.
Yeah, well, that was the inspiration to do these interviews was really just I was donating my time to the Climbing Grief Fund. My wife actually started that program. She's a professional climber, and her name is Madeline Sorkin, and she decided that was something that she thought was lacking in the climbing community. So she's been moving this forward. Yolanda, very similar to you, she like just really trying to pay attention to mental health more in these communities that we just need to talk about it. And what people do with it is up to them, but just talking is so important. And so that was really the platform on which the Climbing Grief Fund was made. And I recognized that it would be really nice to hear people just talking about it, about their experience, about their perspective. And so, yeah, so she knows a lot of, all of those people are somehow connected to her. You know, we didn't really have a Climbing Grief Fund at that point. So a lot of them are friends or friends of friends. And so, but yeah, all of her community has had some interaction with grief on some level. So yeah, that was her, that's her program. And, you know, we're gearing up to do another round of interviews. It'll be quite different this time, but we'll see. But yeah, people have been all of those interviews in full are free online. So if you go to the Climbing Grief Fund site, they're in the Story Archive project, and you can see all of them. They're anywhere from like 18 to 40 minutes long. They're pretty much, I just pretty much edited Madeline out, but otherwise they're unedited. And yeah, people have been finding them incredibly helpful, just listening.
Well, I think what I quite appreciated about the film is it never once did anyone blame the act of climbing, that it was actually kind of, you know, they were doing it because they enjoyed it. That was you know, that's why they were there. So and I think, you know, because it's so easy to kind of find something to blame, but I think that's what I just really respected, is that everyone talked about how much joy it brought, or how much kind of inspiration that the act of climbing kind of gave them. I'm going to move on to Finding Elijah now. So Yolanda, so again, you know, exceptionally personal journey of one mother's plight to reconnect and share her son's story until his untimely passing, an investigative arc of suicide and mental health with a mother at the helm. It harnesses the power of pebbles of life we leave behind and how they can provide comfort or complexity to those close to them. So this is probably one of the most personal documentaries that I've seen, mainly because you've chosen to be in front and behind the camera. And as you say, not a self-confessed non-cinematic person, you know, you didn't do film school or anything like that. How have you found the process of challenging yourself to talk about this on camera, but also be in the moment of reliving everything as director? Is that something, has that been cathartic, or has that been excruciating?
It was cathartic. It was definitely cathartic. You know, I had several hats I wore during the process of making that film, you know, and I think one of the hardest parts for me was the editing. You know, my director's hat would fall off and my mom hat would come back on. I'm like, wait, give me a minute, you know, walk away for a second and get it together, put my producer's director's hat back on, and then sit back down with it. But I actually feel like I bathed myself with my son for 2 years in the process of making the film, you know, because when it was so shocking when it happened, you know, like, wait a minute, what do I do now? You know, and just the finality of him being gone, it just really, really bothered me. It bothered me a lot. Like, this can't be it. You know, like I was ready, you know, so of all the years we talked about movie making and filmmaking between the two of us, I was like, you know, well, if he's not here to make a film, then I'm going to make it and I'm going to give him a voice in it. So that was basically how I came up with it, because I couldn't, as a grieving mom, I didn't know what else to do. You know, I just didn't want to just wake up, like I say in the film, I just want to wake up the next day and cook some eggs. Okay, well, Elijah's gone. Like, how was I supposed to, first of all, how was I going to carry that? How was I going to hold all of that in and walk around and be a sane person, you know, so.
Well, you have this line, which is like meeting Elijah for the first time again, which I found, which is a beautiful rhetoric to kind of come from a mother, because it's almost recognizing the accolades and progression he made, rather than it being seen as a negative of we've disconnected, that they couldn't share these things with me. How have people responded to the film? Because obviously, you know, you've been on the festival circuit with this film.
Yeah, you know, that was something that honestly I had not thought through. I didn't think this all the way through, because I'm finding that with each festival, there are numerous people who just open up about their experience, you know, whether they've lost someone or if they were having suicidal thoughts themselves, you know, and I always try to remind people, like, I'm not an expert, but my advice is to definitely seek professional help. Definitely find someone to speak with. You know, it's especially in the Black and Brown community, a lot of people don't want to get help. And I'm like, if you broke your arm, you go to the doctor, you know? So, I mean, if you're running around angry all the time, if you're having racing thoughts, you're thinking about hurting yourself, get help. You know, there's help available. And it doesn't have to be, you know, I guess with the mistrust, you know, of over medicating or under medicating, or, you know, so I said, listen, just find the right fit, you know, just keep trying until you feel good, you know, so.
I mean, I can definitely understand how it's helped people, and there's a line in there where it's one of the speaking heads in there where she said, we learned about mental health the wrong way. And again, like a line that you just hear and you just go, yeah, that's simplistically put, but it resonates so much. And I think it's something that is and should be more discussed more at length, especially to break the gender stereotypes, because like you say in the film, you know, men feel that they can't unshackle these emotional burdens, that they kind of have to man up and you know, keep it repressed. And I mean, have you had men react? You just said there that you've had a lot of people kind of respond to the film, but have you had men react to the film in the way that you hoped that they would?
And that is so ironic, because there was a young man that I met who was a music director at the funeral home when we had Elijah's memorial. And we exchanged information, you know, and then, you know, we started to, you know, talk on, social media. And then it was like months and months. I couldn't, you know, I didn't get any response. And finally, he responded, and he expressed to me that he was having some troubles, blah, 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 blah. I said, listen, let me send you the link. I said, I want you to watch the film, you know. And he sent me back a message, and I don't have it right close to me, but when he sent that was the first time that I guess the confirmation that people get what I was trying to give through that film, you know. And he said, you know, when I watched that film, he said, it made me think twice. You know, he said, number one, I don't want to put my family through this. He said, I don't want to put my family through that. He said, whatever it is I have to do to get myself straight, I'm going to do it. He said, because I would hate for my family to have that burden after I'm gone. He said, I'm gone now, but they still have that burden. You know, I heard something that someone said something about suicide doesn't take the pain away, it just transfers it to another person. You know, so I don't know. It's just, you know, and the oddest part is his older brothers and his father, Elijah's brothers and his father, they haven't seen the film.
Is that
they're not in the film. I think because I don't think they're emotionally ready to handle it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm in therapy. My therapist said, everyone grieves at their own pace. I said, you know what? I won't push. I won't push. I won't push, you know, but I do try, especially with my 28-year-old, to tell him, I said, listen, just get help, you know. So he's sort of in therapy, you know. He maybe once every 3 months he'll talk to his therapist, but that's better than nothing if you ask me. You know, just the fact that he's trying is something that I'm really proud of him for.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful because it means that you have something there that when they are ready, whether that be next week, next month, next year, that it you know, and I think again, like what I found about all of these documentaries is it's never just on face value about one thing. It's always about this idea of, you know, the legacies that are left, and especially, you know, knowing that you can piece together that kind of final part of Elijah's life and actually kind of make some good from it, that you can actually kind of pass on that message, I think is extremely wonderful. So we're going to move on to the 8th province, which again is this kind of you know, a community of Basque immigrants combining their experience and the memories and cultural history to strengthen the generations to come. So again, kind of passing on this kind of torch of knowledge. A story about persecution, the prevailing reputation that harms, and an exploration of the passion within one's cultural identity. So Carl, this was such an open community that allowed you to essentially break bread with them and hear their stories. Did you already know of the community, or was this a project that you had to build that trust?
Yeah, I came into Bakersfield where it's filmed, having never met any of these people before. So I definitely had to build that trust up. And it's kind of still in the process of building. I don't think it doesn't end with the end of the film, right? It's kind of this ongoing thing. But I actually kind of piggybacked, in a sense, on some oral historians research. So there's this Basque museum in Boise, Idaho that does projects all over the country. And 2 oral historians who have lived in Bakersfield their whole lives, one of whom is Basque, was doing kind of this broad interview project of Basque women. And that was kind of my in when I connected with them. They were kind of amazing guides through the community and definitely helped build that trust for the eventual people who were the subject of the film.
And did you tell them that you wanted to make a film, or is this something that kind of, you know, transpired as you got to know them a bit better? And how did they react when you kind of said, I'm going to make a documentary about you?
Well, first of all, I was surprised that just the age we live in, I guess. I was kind of explaining, you know, documentary form a lot of the time, because when someone shows up with a camera, people just kind of tend to either embrace you or kind of shy away. And I think I was surprised that a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, documentaries! Like it's on everyone's lips, and it's such a popular form right now that that was one kind of barrier I was expecting, but it was fairly easy for them to comprehend that. You know, a lot of people have come into Basque communities actually from the outside, like me, and having interest both in their history, usually like about their language. But I think this community in particular was very open to having someone come and learn. And for me, it was about articulating that I don't, kind of like Yolanda and Henna have both said, you know, I don't have a particular vision for what I'm doing right now, but I'm using the camera to kind of, as a tool for me to learn too. And you know, I think articulating that over, you know, hey, I'm here to make a film about you, was kind of the thing that I learned to kind of help the project along.
There's definitely a sense of like observational kind of element there, which I kind of feel when you're wanting to put yourself into an environment which is new is perfect, because it's almost like, you know, we say about those, you know, irrelevant moments, just, you know, what people hear, what people see, like, you know, what they breathe and how they eat and how they kind of commune together.
Mm-hmm.
Have the community seen the film?
Yeah,
And what did they think? What did they think of it?
yeah, I think you know, it's I've gotten great feedback. I think people within that very local community are just really happy about kind of maybe this like broad stroke portrait of the Basque community there. I do have a plan, which has been a little bit upended by the pandemic, to actually distribute the film through the North American Basque Organization, which oversees all of these Basque clubs.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to get kind of this grassroots level dissemination of the film in order to kind of have more conversations about what's portrayed and what isn't, and all these things. But so far, you know, for the Bakersfield Basque community that I've heard from, and a few sheep herders actually in the Basque country in Europe, I've gotten great response.
Oh, good, good. The one thing that I've found quite refreshing actually is the young lad in it. Like he's so kind of eager, and you know, he's kind of immersing himself, and it's quite, I suppose, from a Basque community as well, to see a younger generation actively engage, is it must be kind of quite heartwarming, especially, you know, kind of that these are kind of very small communities kind of building that up.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I found really fun, but also something that I would never have known about, is the improvised verse singing, which I found really kind of quite humorous and just very unique, but as well as the game of handball and those moments where we're treated to something that's so unique as an audience member. You know, it's perfect for documentarians like all of you. How do you find that balance of showing your audience what you want to and what you need to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one way to think about it. I don't think I really thought about it that way, where you know, some of the deeper historical questions that I was interested in, you know, everyone has their version of dealing with the past. So some people were very willing to talk about kind of this history of political repression in the Basque country. Some people weren't. Some people I kind of had to sit with for a long time and find out a way they were comfortable talking about it. I didn't think about those things as being more important, or there was a necessity to show those things over kind of this almost like celebratory uh, uh, celebration of this like immigrant community who has like kept some of their really important traditions alive. So yeah, I guess when I edit together like this handball sequence versus like someone talking about not being able to speak their language growing up as children, I don't really hold those two things on different levels, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great collection because if anything, it shows you that it's still thriving. That there is that community, there is still that engagement, especially within each other as well. So moving from one period of history to another, we talk about Dennis, the man who legalized cannabis. So a documentary that introduces us to and takes us on the epic journey of Dennis Perrone, the man whose focus was on decriminalizing cannabis for medicinal purposes, touching on homosexuality, the AIDS crisis, and the role of politics. This is a true testament to the progression of Proposition P and the lasting effects it's had. Thank you for joining us, Brandon. Again, like just such an enjoyable documentary that, takes you on a whirlwind of emotions, I feel. And I always find looking at old footage, it either terrifies me at how archaic the world was, or it reassures me that not everything has always been so bad. So when you're putting together the archive footage, how did you decide to include what you did? Because obviously there's a lot of coverage from the riots and the kind of police interaction. How did you, I mean, it's a very lean doc. So how did you, was that hard to kind of edit that down?
Extremely difficult, and just want to say like shout out to my director editors out there. Like it's a heavy lift, and however very a lot of freedom in being able to not only direct but edit and tell your story through the post-production process as well. So yeah, the archival footage plays a huge element in the story itself, being that the shift that happened with how the media perceived the use of marijuana as medicine. You saw, in the 70s all the way up to 1996 when 215 passed, that there was this slow shift that started happening in the early 90s when the AIDS epidemic happened. So Dennis was basically the one that was out there on the front lines and, getting the word out there that there was this AIDS epidemic happening and people were finding relief in this drug. And that basically you saw a shift in the media's portrayal of marijuana as a medicine. Slowly, it went from, potheads all the way to we're actually taking this seriously. People are finding relief. And Dennis was super, super savvy in how he leveraged the media. So instead of he had his cannabis clubs, opened one of the very first cannabis club, and instead of shying away from the media, he said, please come on in and document and tell these people's stories, because you need to see who is in here. They're not criminals, they're not bad people. These are people with serious health conditions looking for relief. So deciding to go very heavily in the archival direction was, from the very get-go, I knew that was the way I wanted to go, because it's just fascinating to see something change so drastically. Yeah.
I mean, that's like I say, like when you look back and you kind of go, oh, okay, there's probably more kind of open-minded people of older generations back then that were actually kind of, again, actively engaged in needing to use it for medicinal purposes. What do you think Dennis would think of the drug legalization if he were here today? Bearing in mind, we've made leaps and bounds in some respects, but we've also had a lot of curtailing in others.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say Dennis would probably not be extremely enthusiastic about Prop 64 in California specifically, there are a lot of private, interests that have pushed through. It's the most taxed thing in the world pretty much right now. It's kind of crazy. And, I don't think he would like that aspect of it, but I know that with the sort of CBD thing happening now, it's even more so building upon what he started, which was marijuana as a medicine and the legitimacy of that idea, and just taking away the stigma that we've been trying to eradicate for so many years now. War on drugs, and before that, Nixon era legislation, just so much things that have prevented us from really discovering about this plant. And I think he would be pretty partial to the regulation around it and how it was instituted. But I think from a larger point of view, we're getting closer to what he wanted. So I'm kind of also echoing his partner, John Entwistle, who was featured in the documentary. And yeah, he and Dennis, fought, for decades together on this issue. And I think he expressed with me a lot of his disinterest, I guess he was very vocal about how, he hated Gavin Newsom, and just very open, which I really enjoyed. I really wish I could have gone more into what's happening currently, but it was more of a film about the past and where we came from, and about this person who I didn't know who he was before I began this film. So yeah, it's an exploration of someone who created this movement that basically changed the world in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, I'm living in the UK, and I'm British. So when we look to this conversation of medicinal cannabis in our legislation and governmental laws, like it's always such a taboo subject, because it's always about the grading of the drugs and about how much you're carrying, and is that kind of intent to solicit and so on. And I find it fascinating that when you have such a large space like America, that you can kind of have these areas where they're more allowing, and then others are really, really strict, and they kind of sit side by side. And like, we know so many friends who rely on medicinal cannabis, but they're not in a state that allows it, so they have to travel. And you just kind of go, isn't that kind of phenomenal that you have to factor that in? It's not a case of, I need some medicine, I'll take it because I need it. It's like, I need some medicine, I need to take it, I need to travel, so I'm not kind of pursued by the law. I find it fascinating. Then you have somewhere like Amsterdam, where it's absolutely fine, because their approach to that legalization is that if you legalize it, it makes people actively try and seek it in any way, shape or form that they can. If you legalize it, it means that people kind of go, okay, it's fine. It's there's not that kind of, they call it the gateway drug, and I just think, no, that's like coffee. That I think coffee is the gateway drug. And I know that you mentioned, like, my next question was, do you feel that there still is a stigma with cannabis use today, which you kind of just touched on. But I think the reason why I found this documentary really intriguing is, again, I didn't know about Dennis at all. Whereas now I kind of look at it and go, okay, he was instrumental in what we are doing today and where we are today. And I think it's just interesting that, if you could kind of show that to people who are anti-cannabis and just see what their response is. Have you had any kind of response?
So living in the Bay Area, people are very liberal, so it's hard to find someone these days that's anti-cannabis.
Okay.
I would really enjoy that experience, actually, to be able to see an audience that is really anti-cannabis. Sort of, that's, to me, that's like a completely generational difference at this point. And it would be very interesting to see. I would love to get, you know, the other side of the story and understand where this is coming from and why, you know, through the newest research that we have now, and the fact that, I don't know, our neighbors in the North, Canada, it's legal in the entire country. It's slowly becoming, you know, medicinal and then recreational here in the US. So it's really interesting to see. I think when it boils down, it's, what I found fascinating is going through the archival footage and even these, you know, hearing from these people that really lived through it. It's like, were you on the right side of history when back then, or are you now? And I think this is still a very big issue that we're living through right now, especially with the election coming up, is that there's a lot of very idealistic people out there. And you know, you just think, like, if you're in front of if you're on a major news network saying these things and taking these stances, how is that going to age in 10 years? You look at, in the beginning of the documentary, there's a great line that I just thought was hilarious, which was, "This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show." And you're just, it's just sick that how these people thought it was a joke. And it's, you know, they're prescribing people Marinol, which is synthetic cannabinol, and it's completely making them sick, more sick than they already are. And they're just refusing to listen to, you know, just fact that people are getting the relief that they need. So I think, yeah, being on the right side of history is just like the huge takeaway I had. And yeah.
Oh, it's so interesting. So if any of you have watched each other's films and you want to ask any questions or comments, like I've run over time, but I'm going to run it a little bit longer because I'm really enjoying speaking to all of you. So if any of you got any questions for each other about their films or kind of comments.
I'm kind of itching to hear from Yolanda. I've been kind of tapped in lately to these community media initiatives. So here in the Bay Area, there's like Bayvac, and I'm in Santa Cruz, but down in Watsonville, there's Digital Nest, and there's kind of better known ones around the country like Novak and Scribe in Philadelphia.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, and I think Scribe was involved in this in your film.
Yes.
So I'm wondering about that specifically, like what was the role for you in working with Scribe, but also in general, kind of this idea of like grassroots media and self-determination through kind of these media access centers.
Well, you know, the ironic thing is Elijah attended Scribe as a young teen during, I guess he was around 9 years old when he decided he wanted to make movies. So my job as a parent was to find whatever summer program here or summer program there, or, you know, so he'd attended Scribe. And the day of his memorial, a mutual friend of his father, my ex-husband, and I handed me an envelope, and he said, "Listen, Scribe, you know, you need to check them out." And I was like, "Scribe?" I was like, "I know that place." I said, "I know what you." So yeah, I applied for the scholarship and received the full scholarship to do the inaugural Film Scholars Program, which wow, I mean, I learned, I think, let's see, we started in September of 2017. Elijah passed in June. We started in September, and I think I cried through every class until like December. And I remember contacting the director, and I was like, "Louis, I don't think I could do it. It's just too much." And he said, "Listen, just take some time. We're on break right now." He said, "When we come back in January, let's see how you feel." He said, "Because we're making a movie." I said, "Okay." And I kind of went through the process because, like I said, I grieved throughout the whole process. You know, I really didn't like allow myself like solitary time to just grieve. And I guess I needed that support. that group support, and there's also another organization, I'm not sure if you all are familiar with, called Good Pitch Local. Is anyone familiar with Good Pitch Local? Good Pitch Local is a Doc Society event, and they bring media makers, community organizers and media makers into a room with funders, supporters, and partners. And there's information that Good Pitch Local collects prior to the big event. But what they do is they get everyone in the room together. Of course, with COVID, we had to do it virtually this year, but you get in the room and you have 3 minutes to pitch your project. And those people who can actually help propel your project forward are in the room, and they stand up, and it's pro bono, So I was able to get help in that respect, because at Scribe, it was just a 15-minute short, and it was so sad. And I was like, wait, I'm responsible for the energy I bring into the room. I can't just drop that in people's laps, and just walk away. So when Good Pitch Local came around, in my mind, I was like, okay, I need some Black mental health professionals for representation, number one, and just to get some information out there. So with Good Pitch Local, I was able to get a full day of production pro bono with Fresh Fly Studios. So it just all came together, and I was so grateful for that. And we've done a few community screenings here in Philadelphia, yeah, I'm definitely going to be doing more. In my mind, I thought I'm going to make this movie and then I'm going to go sit on the beach for like a week, and it's like, no, it's with you. This is part of you now. Like you're attached to it, you're married to it, and you're going on for the rest of your days. So it's okay, it's all right. It was that was heavy when I finally realized that you're going to be talking about this for a long time. So get your, I almost cursed. Get yourself together, because, Black healing matters, and you have to make sure that you're in a space where I have got to be able to handle it, so it's been good for me. It's definitely been good for me. And it's so weird to even be able to say that about this situation, and that was something that I struggled with for a very long time. Like, how do I enjoy the happy that comes along with creating art that's impactful? How do I enjoy the happy, because it's such a heavy subject,
I feel like you just scratched the surface of something that just needs to be talked about every day for at least half a day.
Yep.
Everybody, whether you're Black or not, just
Yep.
trying to understand, especially Black men. I think as a white person, I would like to understand the emotions and the healing and the needed, and in my own personal relationship to that demographic. And I just think everybody could use that conversation. And I feel like at the end of the film, I just felt like you only just sort of tapped the surface. I don't really even think you got into it. You just sort of were like, boop, with just the few people that you had to, really anchor. Yeah. And I was so grateful to have some of those therapists just speak about what your son was going through is not a lone thing, that he's a part of a systemic issue that we all need to turn towards and pay attention to. And I'm hopeful, but also just curious, do you think that you'll make another that is maybe less on your son and more on that conversation, now that you've been able to process that experience?
That's a great idea. I have the Philip Roundtree, who's in the film, who sports the shirt. This is his thing here. Yeah. He has a men's group that he does every Monday. So I'm not sure how. I think he moved to a podcast now since the pandemic. But that's a great idea to continue the conversation, because basically, in addition to wanting to share Elijah, the movie was meant to open up the dialogue. So hopefully
it felt that way. It felt like you started with Elijah, and then by the end, it wasn't about Elijah.
It was just about
what needed to be talked about. That he opened the door for you, and then you opened the door for us. And I would like to walk through the door now and understand more. So you're not the only one talking about this.
Right.
Me personally, I'm gonna seek out more documentaries. But if you make another one, let me know.
Will do.
Yeah, sharing to the audience what you want to hear.
We have one audience member.
we've probably got time for one more question if anyone has any questions or statements. I'm kind of, I get given half an hour and I push it a little bit. But has anyone else got any statements just before I wrap up? No?
Well, just thinking about what's kind of connecting these films in interesting ways. Maybe this is more formally too, but and if anyone wants to speak on this or not, feel free. But thinking about kind of the archives and the diversity of the ways each of these films deals with the past and deals with like what we think of as actual archival footage. Maybe. And I think the three of your films each treat it totally different, and there's kind of this totally different emotional thing happening when we see the archives playing out. So maybe if there are any filmmaking decisions, really hard things to craft concerning the archival footages in either one of your films, I'd love to hear about how you're thinking about locating those.
I think it brings a level of authenticity to a film that you just can't accomplish any other way. It feels so truthful in that you like, especially in Henna's film, we're talking about these people through the interviews, and then we see these people through the archival footage, and that really resonated with me. And the same thing with Elijah as well. It's, you can talk about all these people you want, but then when you kind of just stop the talking and let them either speak or just show them for who they were, it speaks volumes to that medium. It feels unedited, even though it is, because you as the editor chose that specific chunk. It just feels authentic, and that's the stuff that gives me goosebumps when I watch a documentary. Is that the main difference from fiction is everything is scripted, and to be able to see something that just unfolds completely naturally, it's that person's life. And so yeah, archival is amazing when you can track it all down, and if you have it, really using it as a resource, because it's costly to shoot things, but also to license things as well. But if, like in Elijah's case, I can only imagine, in your research process, Yolanda, just finding and going through that process of that. When you brought up the phone, mm-hmm. I was seen a few documentaries now or like listen to a lot of podcasts that are kind of like almost like investigative journalism, and the amount of information about a person that is on their phone these days is just like, it tells a whole story.
Yeah.
Like, through photos, videos,
yeah.
poetry. It's just incredible what you're able to, it's such a resource.
I still have a desktop computer, a MacBook Pro, a Toshiba laptop, an iPad, and a phone that I have yet to gain access to.
Mm.
Wow.
And, some of the things that I don't have access to yet are the ones that he was using while he was actively away. So I'm like, I know that there are going to be things on there that I'm going to discover. And, during the process of making the film, I really had to pull back and say, how much of his life did I really want to share? Mm-hmm. There were some things that I did not include in the documentary that I said I have to hold that private and respect his privacy and not exploit him, so yeah.
Just to add one more thing about that, archival footage happens when you're not making a film. And I think that's when you get the best stuff.
Absolutely.
It's so true. It's so true. Almost like the final garnish.
Yeah.
To kind of tie everything together. I honestly could talk to you guys for hours, and I'm afraid I have to let you all go. But it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to all of you about your films. They've really touched me, and I really hope that they've touched the audience watching. And thank you to the audience for watching this Q&A. Thank you for all of your insights as well. It's been absolutely wonderful to hear them, and we do hope that you and the audience tune in to what else the festival has to offer. But thank you so much for all of your films,
Thank you.
for your bravery and for your creativity, and
Thank
please
you.
carry on and make more films because I would like to see them.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.